When my daughter-in-law told me I should leave, I smiled instead of crying. I still remember how strange that felt. My face was calm, but my heart was shaking. I stood there in the doorway of the house I once called home, holding a small bag, wondering how everything changed so quietly. That morning started like any other. I woke up early before the sun, like I always did. Old habits never leave you. I made tea for everyone, even though no one asked me to anymore. The kitchen was silent except for the sound of the kettle. Silence has a way of speaking louder than words. I had lived in that house for years. I helped raise my son there. I cooked meals, washed clothes, watched the walls age with us. I believed that love, once given, would always be remembered. I was wrong. She didn't shout. She didn't insult me. She spoke softly, almost politely. That hurt more than anger ever could. She said, "Mom, maybe it's better if you stay somewhere else for a while." For a moment, I didn't understand. I waited for her to laugh. I waited for her to say she was joking. But her eyes were serious, and her voice was steady. I looked at my son. He didn't look back at me. He stared at his phone, like the floor suddenly became more interesting than his own mother. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not loudly. Not all at once. Just a quiet break, like a thin glass cup slipping from your hands. I wanted to ask so many questions. What did I do wrong? When did I become a burden? How did love turn into inconvenience? But I didn't ask anything. I nodded. I smiled. And I said, "All right." As I walked back to my room, I felt smaller with every step. Not weak. Just unseen. I packed slowly. Each folded dress carried a memory. A wedding. A festival. A late night waiting for my son to come home. I touched the walls one last time, as if they could remember me even if the people didn't. That day, I didn't just leave a house. I left behind years of sacrifice, silence, and love that was never spoken about. And as I stepped outside, the door closing softly behind me, one thought stayed in my mind. How did I become the one who no longer belonged? Before that day, my life felt simple, even when it was hard. I had lived most of my years believing that family was something you hold on to, no matter what. You forgive. You adjust. You stay quiet when things hurt, because love matters more than pride. I am a widow. My husband passed away 8 years ago, quietly, in his sleep. After that, my world became smaller. My son, Daniel, became my whole focus. He was my only child, the one I raised with every bit of strength I had. Daniel grew up kind and responsible. He worked hard, got married, and built a life that made me proud. When he married Sarah, I welcomed her with an open heart. I told myself I had gained a daughter, not lost a son. After my husband died, Daniel insisted I move in with them. He said, "Mom, you shouldn't be alone." I didn't want to be a burden, but I also feared the quiet of my empty house. So I packed my things and moved into their home. At first, everything felt warm. The house smelled of fresh coffee in the mornings. There was laughter at dinner. Sarah was polite, always smiling, always busy. I tried to help where I could. I cooked when Sarah worked late. I folded laundry, but I stayed out of the way. I reminded myself that it was their home, not mine. I spoke softly. I asked permission. I tried to be invisible when needed. Sarah and I were never close, but I believed respect was enough. She liked things done a certain way. I learned quickly. I adjusted without complaint. Daniel worked long hours. Most days, it was just Sarah and me in the house. The silence between us grew slowly, like a crack in a wall you don't notice at first. Sometimes I felt like a guest who had stayed too long. But I pushed those thoughts away. This was family. Family stays. I told myself patience was love in another form. So I waited. I smiled. I kept my feelings to myself. I had no idea that, in Sarah's heart, a decision was already forming. A decision that would change everything I believed about my place in their lives. At first, the changes were small. So small that I almost ignored them. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself every home has quiet days. My daughter-in-law, Emily, used to greet me in the mornings. She would say, "Good morning, Mom," and pour me a cup of tea. But slowly, those words disappeared. Some mornings, she walked past me as if I was part of the furniture. I noticed the kitchen felt different. When I cooked, she no longer asked what I was making. If I cleaned, she would redo it later without a word. It made me feel invisible, like my efforts no longer mattered. My son, Daniel, became quieter too. He used to sit with me in the evenings and talk about his day. Now he stayed in the bedroom longer. When I asked if something was wrong, he said, "Everything's fine, Mom," but his eyes avoided mine. Small comments started to slip into conversations. Emily would say things like, "We like our space," or "We're trying a new routine." Her voice was calm, but her words felt sharp. Each time, I smiled and nodded, even though my chest felt tight. At dinner, I noticed they spoke to each other more, and to me less. Sometimes they made plans without telling me. I would hear about them later, by accident. It felt like standing outside my own family, looking in through a glass wall. One evening, I overheard Emily on the phone. She didn't know I was in the hallway. She said, "It's just hard having someone else here all the time." I stopped breathing for a moment and quietly walked back to my room. After that, I started questioning myself. Was I talking too much? Was I in the way? I began staying in my room longer, hoping my absence would make things easier. I stopped asking questions. I stopped offering help. I moved carefully, like I was afraid to make noise. The house felt smaller, even though